Hey, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Thriving Thoughts. I am your excited host today, Dr. Sherri. I'm Dr. Sherri every other day, by the way, but I'm excited today to bring to you my friend, Michelle Kuzmick. She is a business and productivity strategist. Yes, she helps women figure out how and what they need to do and when they need to do it. You know that ugly word, systems. She loves it. So if you're looking for a system for your business, for your life, so that you can attend to the stuff that matters, she's your woman. But guess what? I don't just promote anybody on the show. I promote people who I know have been there, done that, and not only that, are doing it. So today, because the theme of season 4 is thriving alone, my dear friend Michelle has agreed to come on the show and talk about thriving alone through and after divorce. So I know a lot of you, unfortunately, the statistics don't lie. Over half of all marriages will end in divorce. And a lot of us, let's face it, we can find ourselves feeling alone both inside of a relationship and in the aftermath of the dissolution of a relationship. So I'm going to get out of the way and invite my friend Michelle Kuzmick to let us know what she learned about thriving in those alone spaces after divorce. Please enjoy my conversation with Michelle Kuzmick. All right. Michelle Kuzmick, thank you so much for joining me for the show. It's good to have you here today.
It's good to be here, and it's good to see your beautiful face, too. We had only talked on the phone before, so I kind of like this part.
I know. It's so true. Because I think originally when you and I met, we did connect via phone, and typically these days I'm trying to do as many Zoom calls as possible, but I don't think you and I even tried to do that. We just talked on the phone.
We didn't. I don't know why, but anyway,
Yeah.
But it's good because the only vision I have of you in my head has been the flowy red dress on your podcast.
Right. And which is really funny because so now I have like a more serious picture for season 4 of the podcast. Not that the other picture was fun. It was me. It was reflective of me, but I just decided to go a little bit more serious. So I just got my new artwork finished. So I'm excited to show that off for season 4 when this episode launches in January. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I love your pictures behind you. Is that all of your family?
No. I've been a photographer for 20 years, and those are my senior spokesmodels from the class of 2020. The office that I'm in is where I show all my proofs and things. So that is my 2020 girls. Now, the one in the middle in the pink, that is my daughter because she's a 2020 graduate. But
yeah. Wow. So I've got a question for you there because 2020 graduations look quite different across the nation, across the world, really.
Yeah.
So were the photo shoots any different? Because I'm assuming that you've done this, these senior photo shoots for years. So what was different about this year?
The difference honestly was, and everybody laughs when I say this, is that people spent a whole lot more money. What I seen happening, and this wasn't for the class of 2020 because they were graduated and done, but the incoming 2021 class, which I shoot from mainly June through November. They do it before the senior year gets started. They're casuals. The parents were spending a lot more money because I think that they just wanted to do something extra special because we don't know what the world is going to look like.
So what did that extra special look like?
So I have 4 different packages, and one of them is an album. And that basically tells the whole story of them. It shows off their the things that they really like, sports, whatever it be. And then it has a quote in the beginning, and then it closes out with their formal senior picture. And typically, if you know anything about sales, you want people to buy what's in the middle. That's what you gear toward, is people buying the middle package. And that's what normally people buy. And the album has always been my highest. And this year I had 52 seniors, which was my highest year ever in on 20 years. And I sold,
oh my goodness.
I sold 22 albums. And normally,
so basically half of
and
your
normally
clientele.
in an average year, I might sell 5.
Wow.
So that's what I really found. I mean, it was a blessing for me, don't get me wrong, but that parents were really trying to go over and above to do something special for their senior. I did the same thing with my daughter's graduation party. I mean, when people walked in, they were kind of like we had truffles that had a diploma on it that had her name on it.
Oh my goodness.
I told the event planning company, like, I want her to be like, wow, when she walks in. And I normally would have never, we were going to do Chick-fil-A trays at the clubhouse and stuff, but you know, I really,
here's your Polynesian sausage.
Yeah. So, and she was fine with that. So that's what I've seen.
Of course she would have been.
Parents are really trying to go over and above to do something special for their seniors.
So so now that you say that, that might be our segue into our topic today, or it might not. You might correct me.
Okay.
But it's interesting because in my past work as a, practicing clinical psychologist, and even now talking with friends and people that I know and people that I coach, there is a tendency toward overcompensation to eliminate the anxiety that I have, but I project that onto being anxiety that somebody else might have.
I think it might have been a little bit of both. I know as a parent, the only 2 times, I mean, the pandemic and shutdown has been, a big roller coaster in lots of areas. But the only time that I really had a complete breakdown was the day that I got the email that graduation was canceled. Yeah. And like, I can remember sitting at the kitchen. It still makes me sad now, sitting at the kitchen table and my 3 kids around me, the one that was graduating, my 2 others, and just sobbing and them going, what does it say? What does it say? And I couldn't get it out because I was just so heartbroken for what wasn't going to happen. I mean, it was her moment. It was her day. It was all the kids' moment. But as a parent, I mean, that's a really big milestone for you too. And it was just heartbreaking for what was lost. And her gift was a cruise, which obviously we didn't go on. So the year,
I'm glad you didn't go.
Yeah. So there was just lots of things that, she was so excited about graduation, even for college, which she didn't do. And that it was just a real struggle. Actually, I think I've probably cried more than what she has. She's handled it really, really well.
Well, right. And that was my point. That was my point, that I think that, that things they're devastating to us from our perspective for the people that we love. Right. Like our kids. But if we took a step back, if you can't because you're their mom. Right. Like, okay, got it. Right. Yeah. But if you're looking at that from the outside, everybody else is seeing these resilient young adults who are rolling with the punches, who are still living life. Yeah. I mean, they're getting creative. They are not, their joy, it hasn't been sapped. They haven't allowed it to be sapped, maybe in more minute moments. But I think we could learn something from this younger generation about resiliency.
One of the questions you told me, the only question that you would ask me that would be scripted was, what are you thriving through? And I have an answer for myself, but what I really was just so proud of my daughter and the way that she has just worked through everything, her job, not knowing, going into the pandemic, not knowing the extent of it in March. Yeah. She had a lot of big plans and she worked retail, which was shut down. And, she used the system unknowingly because she learned that I actually teach women to manage their problems, to troubleshoot, because she still wanted money, assuming that she was going to be going to college and everything.
Yeah.
And she got a job with DoorDash. And, because she was like, well, I still need money. How can I do it? Mom's going to freak if I have to be around people, because where we were in March, I would have been freaking.
Sure.
And then she made an arrangement with her brothers to take one with them, because she knew I wouldn't want her doing it by herself. And she told me it would be done by 10 o'clock every night, so she would be safe. So just her thought process, like to not say, oh, I'm just going to be broke, I'm not going to have any money for whatever.
Right.
To say, oh, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I've just been really, really proud to see her thrive through this mess.
Well, and that's the whole point of it, right? Thriving is learning, it's growing, it's being creative, and creativity is birthed in adversity. I mean, we know this.
Yes, we do.
It's not news. Yeah. And so the reason I thought that might be a good segue, this kind of overcompensation, because it's a phenomenon known to parents who have gone through a divorce. And when you and I talked, and I shared with you a little bit about my vision for season 4 of the show, which is being alone and thriving. And so the goal this season is to really just get to the nitty gritty about places, circumstances, moments, seasons in people's lives that they feel compelled to share about in order to encourage somebody else who may be going through that season right now, right, in their lives. And so thriving alone is going through a period of aloneness, whether you're physically alone or you feel alone, and how you thrive during that time, what you learn about yourself, how you grow, because we can either choose to, curl up and keel over, essentially wither away, or we choose to thrive. I mean, those are the two options. And so when you and I talked, I think you said, for you, that one of the times that you felt really alone was after your divorce.
Yeah, it was. And it's easier to talk about now. And the one of the things that
how long's it been,
that I've
Michelle?
learned? Oh gosh, it's probably maybe 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate because the kid's dad is like, we have a great co-parenting relationship.
Good.
So, other than like that initial first year where I was kind of figuring out not having a person in the house, we've always managed to do everything extremely smoothly. So I've been very, very blessed. But I think one of the things that I learned going through it, because there were nights, and I can still feel this in my soul, like the black hole, was I didn't really know what to do, and I didn't even know what to pray for. Sometimes.
Like, what do you mean? Did you feel like you had to do something?
Well,
like what? I don't know what you mean.
So,
let us in a little bit.
Well, so I did need to do something, going into a divorce or any life change. Lots of things in your life are a train wreck. It's not just that your relationship is, in my business, and I had been in business for about 14 years at that point, was having its worst year ever. And was going,
of course, the perfect storm, right?
And it was going to be even worse looking into it. And I can remember, I tell this story now and I can laugh, but I can remember going to a photo shoot and going through a toll booth, and the guy telling me that I had to give him 70 cents. And like, just the rage I felt, like, why would you ask me for 70 cents? I don't even have that. So, it was kind of just very, very lost. And I, all I knew to do was I just need to pray to pay the bills. But I couldn't really name the emptiness either. So I would just, put my Bible like instead of my pillow, and I would just put my head on it. And,
Yeah.
and those, there were nights.
Osmosis, God,
Yeah.
like put it in there.
I don't know what to say. And I know you need to fix it somehow, but just do something because I'm a train wreck. So it was very, very empty. But there were two things that I learned after the fact. And the first was feeling like you're alone and having to do things alone is really a trauma response from not having, for me, it was a core family where I felt like I was taken care of. That I felt like I could reach out to, and and that looks all kinds of ways in all kinds of families. And then pride wouldn't let me ask for help. And the one thing that realizing that it was a trauma response, and like I'm not really alone.
Can you? Yeah, but can you dig into that more, because that's not really clear. I think to me that verbiage is familiar just because of my, bent in the field of psychology, but for others it may not be. So what was the trauma, and why was being alone, or was it being alone that was the trauma response, or the feeling of emptiness that was the trauma response?
Well, so I think the trauma response was really the inability to receive support from others. Because, growing up, I never learned, hey, if I'm going through a tough time, I've got someone here that really loves me and they're going to take care of me. And
what about in your marriage? You didn't feel like that in your marriage?
So I did actually. And it's funny because if I could name all the people in the world that I know has my back, it would still be my ex. But it's really hard to receive it still. And it was something that I had to do a lot of thought work on. So that was one big thing that I realized why I wasn't able to open up, and then I would overreact to things that happened in my marriage. Because my general feeling is, oh, I'm just going to shut down. I'm not even going to deal with this. Done. And
shut down when what happens?
Feelings.
Any feelings, or just difficult feelings.
Yeah, just any feelings. Yeah, that was something I had.
Now, did you feel? But did you feel? I want to back up because I want to. I really want to dig in here to the precursor of being alone. So we need to really understand as much of the backstory as you're willing to share, Michelle.
Yeah, you're asking the tough questions.
It's my job,
I know
my friend.
it is.
It's my job.
Okay.
So looking back on the marriage, you mentioned two words. You mentioned pride and you mentioned receiving. And so this is a historical proclivity of yours to have difficulty receiving, correct?
Yes.
Like you're lifelong.
Like lifelong, and like anything. And, and I think as women in general, we have trouble receiving. The simple explanation is when someone, it happened at the gym this morning. Somebody was like, oh my gosh, I love your leggings. And I was like, oh, they were $5 at Walmart. It's like, I have to
You're still going to the gym?
Yeah, I'm still going to the gym. That's the only time I get to see people.
Oh, girl, we are shut down. We are shut down in the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, no.
All gyms are closed. Yeah.
We're
shut down.
10 people in classes. You have to make reservations. We're 6 feet apart. Right. My gym is, 15,000 square feet, though. So we have lots of room. It's only 20% capacity. And
So, okay. So we took a little detour there, friends, but that's okay. So talking about receiving.
Yeah. We don't.
Would you say?
Or,
no. Well, for the most part, we don't. But would you say that because when you're in a relationship, when you're in a partnership, it's a prerequisite of the dynamic of the relationship to receive. And so if you're having difficulty, so here's my tough question.
Right. Okay.
If you're having difficulty receiving, and that's a prerequisite, would you agree that that contributed to the demise of the marriage?
I would say most definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was definitely, and then it got to a point in my marriage where I had said what I needed so many times,
Okay.
and it wasn't happening. That it was like I'm just done, and so yeah, it was definitely, but even once I got to that point, again, it was a process. Nobody normally
Yeah.
wakes up and goes, "Hey, we've been married 20 years.
No.
See you later."
Right.
Um,
No, but wait, you just talked about two different things there, Michelle, because you said you had trouble receiving, but then you said, I repeatedly asked for what I needed. So those two things in juxtaposition, if I'm asking for what I need, were you then prepared to receive had it been offered?
So at that point in my life, yes, I was.
Okay.
But then once it got to a point, it was, it's like, I don't care what you do. This isn't going to get any better. It was that kind
Got
of
it.
thing.
Got it.
And I think that's true with most marriages. You say what's wrong. And a friend of mine from high school, he had messaged me the other day about something totally different. And he had said his wife had left, and it was kind of like, well, I'm really sorry. And I said, she didn't tell you? And he said, well, she said she'd been unhappy. And in my brain, of course, I'm not sharing it with him. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, she probably didn't just walk out the door and get an apartment. I think she probably shared it with you for a while. But, sometimes, and on the other side, people get complacent too. They're like, oh, they'll get over it. So there was a lot of that going on. So it was an empty place during that time. I went from my mom's house to my husband's house. And although I was extremely independent, and, my household ran, 90%, I was taking care of everything, like in most houses.
Sure.
It was just,
when CEO.
Yeah. When the first time I had to make the kids lunches, because he had done that every night, because the kids were still in elementary school and middle school when it happened, I was kind of like, how am I supposed to do all this? So it was a different, it was a different kind of feeling. It was a loss. It was definitely a death and emptiness.
Yes. Yeah. So let me ask you about this. When you're in that emptiness, when you're in those empty spaces, when you are alone, because my presumption, Michelle, is that you had some level of feeling alone while you were still in the marriage.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Right. But that is sometimes easy to distract yourself from because there's a physical presence of somebody else there. Yeah. Right. So you don't have to really dig in and do the work and think about all of the stuff that you're going to learn in the alone spaces. Now, you compare that then to when you left and then you were physically alone. You had your kids, but in terms of, adult partnership, you were alone. And that's a different type of alone because it's really difficult to distract yourself. I guess you could have done that a little bit with your kids, but you answered that for us. Did you find that true for yourself, that you were able to distract yourself from going into and sitting in those alone spaces while you were married versus when you weren't?
Yeah. Just having the physical presence here was a different kind of alone. And for the last few years of my marriage, I would go up to bed about 8:00. And although I would be in bed, alone, it wasn't the same emptiness as like a complete empty house when the kids were gone with their dad. It was a totally different kind of, alone.
Right. So what did you think about in those spaces? I'm sorry, something like seriously. So this is so funny. This is like episode 70 something of the entire podcast. And this has never happened before. And because it's the first one on video, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, which is I'm totally fine with, but I apologize to you and to the listeners. So what what kind of things came up for you in that space, in that alone space, when the kids were with their dad and you were alone? What kinds of things would swirl through your head? Because that's what's going to resonate with the people listening right now.
Sadness, a lot of anger. There was a lot of disappointment in myself. Like
about what?
Everything. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? How come nobody loves me? Things, you second guess everything that you in your heart, but it also gives you the opportunity to sit back and go, okay, wait a minute, let's take a breath here. And, today I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to function for 10 minutes. Tomorrow, 20. And so when I finally started to pull myself out of it, and it was anger and rage and just there was a lot of jealousy. One of the pivotal moments in my life actually came when I was on Facebook and I was watching people. And this was right after the episode that I was mad because I didn't have 70 cents for the toll. And a mom had taken her kids to McDonald's or something. And I remember looking on Facebook and I was like, why can't I have that? It's just the jealousy of not being normal. What other people had something, there was something wrong with me because what you
perceived to be normal. So that's the other thing. I know for a lot of people, when we're in that alone space, one of the ways that's tempting to distract ourselves from that, which actually worsens that, is to pay attention and look at what other people have and are doing.
Yeah. Well,
because it's really, really easy to go, oh my goodness, they look like they have it all. And we don't know, right? They could be totally miserable. They could be alone with somebody, but because of the lies that we tell ourselves in our heads, we convince ourselves that that's something that we aren't deserving of, even to a degree, because we don't have it and they do. So there must be something wrong with us.
Well, and social media sets that stage so well. One of a friend of mine just went through a breakup, and what you see, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't share the positive and that you should share all your tearies and just, vomit all your personal life on Facebook. But, for the 5...
Please don't do that.
Yeah. The 5 years that she was in the relationship, we seen the trips and the new cars and the beautiful home and the walks by the lake and things like that. Well, he was very narcissistic and abusive, and it ended with her trying to kill herself. And, I kind of, that was a real, not that I didn't know it, but, looking at people's pain, and especially people after my marriage ended, there were so many women that came up to me because for all intents purposes, everyone thought that we were a solid couple. We'd been together 20 years. I mean, to this day, I don't think we've ever had a real screaming fight. So there were never any signs to the outside world that there was a problem.
Sure.
But I think that a lot of women came up to me that were in unhappy marriages that I was seeing on Facebook when I was in that marriage, thinking, I wish my husband would bring me flowers, or I wish my husband would take me to dinner, or whatever, that came up and shared, how did you get the courage to stop? How did you know it was time to leave? So that was, it gives me a different perception of when I see things on Facebook. Now, I don't fall.
Well, that's the highlight reels.
Yeah. I don't fall down that rabbit hole.
But that's a really important point, because I think when you're feeling alone, there is, again, that temptation to distract. And it is so easy, to just pick up your phone and
go through it,
scroll and go, oh my gosh. Oh, see, I don't have that. Oh, I'll never have that. Oh, their life is so perfect. And, I think, comparison is I mean, didn't Franklin Roosevelt say it's the thief of joy?
Right. Well,
I think it's more than that. I think it's a killer. I think it's
right.
a killer of your very spirit,
Mhm.
because I mean, we just don't know. We just don't know what's going on with other people. And that's why I wanted to bring, a spotlight onto this feeling of being alone, because for you, I think you experienced it both inside the marriage and then outside the
Mhm.
marriage when you were physically alone.
Mhm.
So tell us two things, Michelle, that you have learned about yourself in sitting with those feelings that you talked about of
Mhm.
disappointment,
Mhm.
of sadness, of frustration. What are two things that you learned about yourself in that time?
Well, what I did, and this is actually something I teach, is to kind of, everybody says positive affirmations, you're amazing, don't believe, whatever. And for me, my mind didn't process it that way. And I literally had to sit down and say, all right, why do I believe I'm not good enough?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
sat down and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I think there's something wrong with me. Let me write out everything that's wrong with me. And,
Okay.
I'm not saying this but at my core, there is truly nothing
Mm-hmm.
wrong with me. I mean, I snap a little bit quick
Right.
and I have some triggers and stuff like that. Um, you know,
And we all do.
right. But overall,
But you were perfectly designed. I have a coffee mug that says
okay.
perfectly imperfect.
So it's really been to go back and say, okay, what caused me to
Mm-hmm.
feel this way? And
Mm-hmm.
I shared this recently at a women's retreat. One of my big things was an incident that happened at Disney World when I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked the ladies through it at the retreat, and I said, now, does this mean that 4-year-old little girl is not good enough because she couldn't go on a ride at Disney World?
Mm-hmm.
And, so it was kind of just a step back, and not just that, but just everything in general, to put things in a different perspective
Mm-hmm.
and ask
Mm-hmm.
myself, why do I feel like this? Like, what is
Yeah.
causing me?
Mm-hmm.
What is causing, and is that something I want to hold on to? So that
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
probably the big things that I learned. The other thing that I learned, and it sounds very cliche, is there is always a reason for your mess. Like, if
Yeah.
you sit down and really thrive through it, as opposed to let it
Yes.
suck you dry, you'll
Right.
find out that when you come out the other side, there was an extremely positive thing that could come out of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think those were the two big things. And something I learned that I never had a lot of was empathy. And
Mm.
sometimes I think
For
for people in general,
in general.
yeah, in general, I never really had a lot of empathy. And one of my
Mm-hmm.
old friends, he would always laugh and say, well, yeah, we know you don't care about how they're feeling. um,
Like, suck it up, buttercup.
yeah. And it wasn't that I didn't care, but it was just I didn't want to feel that way, because in my mind,
Yeah. You shut down on
if I
even somebody else's
yeah, if
emotions.
I opened up to
Mm-hmm.
those feelings. So it really gave an
Yeah.
empathy to me, where when someone's struggling, I can,
Yeah.
or they're lashing out, or whatever the
Yeah.
reason is, I can step back and say, okay, so this isn't really
Mm-hmm.
normal. I mean, it's normal trauma response or whatever, but they're probably not angry at me, or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
empathy was something I learned a lot of
Mm-hmm.
during that time. So,
Well, it sounds to me like what you really, the basis, the foundation of what you learned was a tolerance, and not only just a tolerance, but maybe an acceptance of uncomfortable feelings. Because you said before, you just shut down with uncomfortable
yeah,
feelings.
I did. And I've gotten better. I'd say I'm about 75% there. There's still about, something.
Well, you're still young yet. You've got,
I,
the rest of your life to figure that out, right?
I grew up in a real small town, and it's pretty, for lack of a better term, ghetto now. And so I'll say, oh, I'm going Hopewell on you quick. Some things can just take me to 0 to 180 still,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm about 75% there. It's a process.
Yeah. I think, can you just, I have one more of a deeper question about uncomfortable feelings, and then we can move on. But you mentioned that the why became important to you, and why you had the tendencies that you had, or why you felt this way, or why you believed this about yourself. So did you discover why you had started to push painful feelings away in the first place?
Yes, I did, but it was more so incidents that I could say, like the incident at Disney World. I could say, and I did this at the women's retreat, what is your first memory of feeling not good enough? And so it was just different incidents that happened in my life that I could go back and look at it outside the box and break it down. And, it starts with taking the emotion out of it. What are the facts? The facts is my mom would not let me go on a ride at Disney World. The end of story. That's what happened. What did I make it mean? And just the way my mind works, it helped me process. Because just saying, my mom had her own mental issues, and just saying, well, I mean, my mom, was bipolar, probably manic depressant, didn't really give me any sort of peace. So once I started breaking down different incidents and figuring it out, it helped me to process it. And then it also helped me to figure out why I made choices that I did. And, it gets into the whole self-sabotage, upper limiting. And, we could talk for 4 hours about that.
Well, yeah. And so I think what you're touching on is something that all of us as humans do, which is to interpret the behavior of others as having something to do with us, not just something to do with us, but our value, our worth.
Right.
And so the thing about being alone is that when you don't have somebody else to gauge what your worth or your value is, you have an opportunity to figure that out for yourself.
Yes.
Because that's what we do. We go, oh, well, my husband brought me flowers. That must mean
I'm good.
I'm lovable.
Yeah.
That must mean, I'm good.
Right.
Or, oh, my husband hasn't talked to me for 2 days. That must mean I'm not good. Right. It's like it goes both ways.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah. And so when you're in the alone space, though, there's a palpable absence of that.
Yeah. And
of that barometer.
Yeah. And you just kind of, and a therapist that I was seeing at the time, her favorite thing to say to me, and it just used to piss me off, because I'm a doer.
And she was doing her job, right?
Yeah. So, because I'm a doer, like I just need you to tell me how to fix it. She would say, and I'm glad we're on video because I can act this out. She would say, let's just sit with this for a while.
Right.
Sit with it.
You're like, I'm going to throat punch you, lady.
What's going on? I don't want to sit with nothing. I'm paying you. If I want to sit with something, I'll do it at my house.
Right.
Let's sit with this for a while and see what comes up.
Yeah.
But
so have you learned to sit with some of that stuff then, Michelle?
I have. I'm still not good. My mind goes at 210. If everybody else is driving 60, I'm driving at 210. So meditation is not my thing.
Right.
But I have learned to sit with it and say, this is what's happened. And I'm writing it out. But I can't sit in that peaceful space that she wanted me to. Let's have some quiet. And there's nothing quiet about me.
Right. Right. So you're a doer. So then I bet you didn't stay in that alone space too long, that you started to fill that space with doing.
I did. And it was what I needed. And I always, and I can't say I feel sorry, but I worry about women that they get out of a marriage, especially one that lasted like mine did 20 years. Because we're not talking about, hey, you hung out with somebody for 2 or 3 yees. I mean, this is a lifetime. I mean, I was married to him at that time longer than like half my life. So, my sister she said to me too, she was like, he's been in my life over half my life. I don't know how to be without him. But it was, it's a process. But when I see women that, 3 months later, 6 months later, they're, all in a new relationship and life is good and they're doing whatever, I always wonder, did you really process what you needed to process? I worry about that.
Yeah.
So, I've been, I've had a relationship in between, but for the better part of 6 or 7 years, I've been alone. And I know that when I go into my next relationship, I'm going to be the best possible version of me that I can be. And that's good. Did I really think that I would be single for 7 years? No, that wasn't the game plan, but I also know when the time comes and it happens, I'm going to be in a really good space to actually live it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. I'm loving being alone, man. I mean, well, I wrote a book about it, but after my breakup. So I love sitting with it. Conversely, I love to sit in it and be with it and process it. That's the way that I deal with that. But, so what do you love about being alone? Because I think that being alone gets a bad rap.
So I love being able to do what I want. One of the things I think I am a control freak. It does, come from my upbringing. But when I was married, although I made a really good income and he made a really good income, I felt bad about doing things for myself. Because I felt like I was, and it was, again, that's a whole money issue, like felt like I was taking things from the family. But now it's really cool that, I took my kids to Disney World. We just got back Tuesday. And, I was sitting at the beach this weekend, or not this weekend, this summer. And I texted the kids. I was like, hey, we're going to go to Disney World. And I didn't have to talk to anybody about it. I didn't have to do anything. So I really love the freedom. I also, although I'm not good with sitting with it quietly, I do love my alone time. The first few months of the pandemic and having my kids here every single day, homeschooling. My heart goes out, and I work with the homeschool moms every day. I don't think I could have lived through that when my kids were little. I would have lost my mind.
Right. Like you can go down the street to school. How about that?
Yes.
You can get out of my face right now.
Is going to be homeschooling you today.
Right. Yeah.
But
my goodness.
I love the independence. It's really good. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's really to just be able to do, and you don't have to worry about, hey, one of the things my ex, he never wanted to go on a cruise, and I still haven't been able to go on a cruise because of the pandemic, and I planned it.
Sure.
And he wasn't a big traveler. He also did not like concerts, that he wasn't a big like dancer or whatever. And I love it. Like I'm at a concert.
She's like, I got to get down on it.
Yeah, I am in my zone. And I have been to so many concerts and just really being able to enjoy me.
The freedom to do stuff that you love.
Yeah. And I got married at 22, and I did what you're supposed to do. I got a really good corporate job. I married a really good guy. And I really conformed to what he accepted, I guess, is probably not that he was a control freak, but I can remember one time we went.
But you conformed to what you believed you were supposed to be.
Well, yeah, I did. And so I don't have to do that anymore. And the kids, I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if you know who Ric Flair is. Do you know who Ric Flair is? So he's a wrestler, you know, like WWE kind of a wrestler, if you know anything about that. You know. And so one of the things that he would say in his monologue was, "We're going to ride the Space Mountain tonight." And it was just something that was all through the 80s. And I watched wrestling with my grandparents. So when we were at Disney World, we were going through the park, and I kept telling my kids, "We're going to ride the Space Mountain." And they were like, okay. And
Mom's lost it.
Yeah. But if I would have still been, you know, my kids see me dancing in Wawa, because do you have a Wawa by you?
No.
Okay, so they play
I think that's like a Southern Virginia
it's
thing.
a convenience store. They play the best music, but they are used to hearing, you know, I'm singing out loud in Wawa. Like, I never would have done that when I was married, because I didn't feel like that was acceptable. So just the ability to be me, without judgment, and feeling like I needed to be somebody else for someone is the best feeling in the world.
But okay, so I got to ask you there, because I got to hold you accountable. I got to hold you accountable to this.
Okay.
Both of them are your choice, right?
They are.
Being conforming and being hindering yourself from being who you want to be. That's your choice, right?
Yes.
And now not hindering yourself from that and doing that. It's your choice. So what was the catalyst for you when you decided to change you?
Because I never felt like I had a choice, that I needed to conform to be the good girl. And it goes back to, you know, kind of walking on pins and needles growing up. Oh, well, if I do this, everything's going to be okay. It's not going to cause any trouble.
Right.
So, and I kind of went in, and not that he was dominant or anything like that.
Yeah.
My fun side did not fit well with his personality. But I just felt like that's what I needed to do to keep the peace.
But when did you stop deciding to be that way? That's my question.
When did I stop deciding to be that way? Actually,
what was it that made you change who you were being from day to day?
I will tell you, and this is funny. I got in a new relationship. It was about 3 years or so after, and everything about me, he embraced. And it was a really good place for me. Like, I never felt like I had to tone down. I never felt like I needed to be something I wasn't. Like, I hated to cook. I still hate to cook. I never felt like I needed to make him dinner. It was just a really, really good place for me to finally be me. And then when that relationship ended, I'm like, oh, not going back. Yes.
Not going back. Right.
Yeah,
right. So there was an opportunity there for you to experience it firsthand.
Yeah.
And then you said, okay, wow, I got a taste of that. I'm not going back. Okay. Thank you. That answers my question.
I like who I am, and it's good to be who I am. So that was kind of the catalyst to it.
I love that. That's a fantastic story. You got the opportunity to see it, you saw it, and you seized it. So that's beautiful. So Michelle, before we close out today, I want to ask you, can you share a little bit? I know that you're a photographer, but you also do some other things. You have a company called the Priority Project, and you work specifically with women. Right.
So it's not called the Priority Project anymore. I had to
Oh no.
It's not. I had to rebrand because of the great
Okay.
Facebook hack of 2020.
Okay.
I couldn't start a new page called the Priority Project because then when people search for it, they wouldn't know whatever.
They'd go to the old one. Yeah.
Which was really, it's been a good thing. Knock on wood. It's actually the Prioritized Entrepreneur now, and I think that business name really fits what I do. I am a business and productivity strategist, and I work with women who are trying to run a business because they're very career oriented, but they're also trying to raise a family and they're struggling making both happen. So I kind of help women say, okay, what is it that we want to do? What's our priority? And then I help them create a strategic action plan to make it happen.
I love that. So how do you do that? What does that look like? Is that virtual coaching? Is it group coaching?
I do a little bit of both. I have a group coaching program. I have a vision planner that I just launched. If they want to just work through it by themselves. And then I do one-on-one coaching as well.
Okay. Beautiful. So how do people get in touch with you, Michelle? And who is your person? Like, okay, I want you to talk to our people that are listening and those that are watching this on YouTube right now. Talk to them and tell us who your client is. I know you said specifically women, but give us a really clear picture so that woman sitting in her car or in her kitchen or in her office or wherever she is right now, she knows whether or not this is indeed for her.
Okay. So my person is an entrepreneur. That has a dream in her heart to do something big with her business, but is really struggling with probably mom guilt and feeling scattered and overwhelmed by all the things she feels like she needs to do, and is constantly just putting out fires. And they really want a step-by-step action plan and need a support system. So it's actually a woman that's kind of feeling like they need to do it alone. And they just need someone to say, hey, look, I've walked this road. This is what we need to do. That's kind of the women that I work with the best. And once we get past the mom guilt, it all just gets us.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. What's the best way for them to reach you, Michelle?
MichelleKuzmick.com.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And we'll include that link in the show notes as well. And your new Facebook page. For those of you that don't know, Michelle had, so you get the pandemic, right? That's just one layer. And then you get somebody, from Vietnam hacking into your Facebook page. And then,
it's been, I'll tell you, when Google went down the other day, I don't know if you know that Google had.
I didn't even know Google went down.
Google had a glitch. One of their servers went down, and
Google had a glitch.
Yeah, Google had a glitch, and I got up and I started to log on, and Google said that they could not find my user, and I was literally like,
oh, wow.
Oh, now my Google's gone. Somebody's taken my Google.
No, right.
Yes.
Right.
And the panic.
Tech sabotage 2020.
Yeah, it was about 7 minutes of me wanting to puke when I got a text from my kid's school that said, hey, virtual school starts 2 hours late because Google's down. So I was like, oh, good.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that they had a glitch and it had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, is there anything that you wanted to share with us that I have not yet asked you, but you wanted to make sure that you shared with the people listening?
I think my big thing is to just really take a look at what you're struggling with and decide, are you going to work through it or are you going to wallow in it? Because that's really the first decision.
That's good.
Do you want to play victim or do you want to figure it out? Because once you decide to figure it out, you will.
She doesn't mince words, does she? Work through it or wallow in it. What's it going to be, baby?
Yes.
I love it. I love it. So, hey, listen, I ask a question at the end of every episode. And for season 4, it's a little bit different, but not much. And so because the theme of this season is thriving alone, I'd love for you to leave the people listening and watching with one truth that you want them to never forget when the show ends about thriving alone.
So, I think I just want them to know that thriving alone can be the most unbelievably amazing thing you've ever experienced if you let it be. It's not always the end of the world, and you'll make it through. And again, if you choose to make it through, if you choose to figure it out, you will, and you'll come out the other side a whole lot better than what you were going in.
All right. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. And hey, listen, if you know somebody who has gone through a divorce and maybe they're in those alone spaces right now, this would be a great opportunity for you to share some encouragement with them that this is not the end, that this is also an opportunity to thrive, not merely survive. Also, my friends, in case you didn't know, I've written a book about a split, not a divorce, but a relationship split, and it's called Breakup Breakthroughs. I'd love for you to check it out. The links to order off of Amazon are in the show notes. I walk you through 10 questions that I asked myself after my breakup so that I could use that experience to thrive and not just survive. Please also remember to check out Michelle Kuzmick on Facebook. The links are in the show notes. She also has a Facebook group called The Prioritized Entrepreneur, and it's a group specifically for women who want to build a business that thrives, but they don't want to sacrifice everything that matters. So if that's you, be sure to click on the link in the show notes and join her group. Also remember, if you would like Thriving Thoughts text messages straight from me to your text messaging inbox 3 times per week, all you need to do is text the word thrive, THRIVE, to the United States number 540-369-2139. Again, text thrive to 540-369-2139. If you're an Apple Podcast user, please do share this episode with a friend. Click 5 stars. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. And stay tuned for this Friday for a solo episode with me. Another episode about growth. And this time, I'm going to challenge your motivations to grow. And we're going to talk about what the fruit of our own growth must be used for if we and others whom we serve are going to thrive. Until Friday, my friends, remember to speak truth over the lies, and you too will thrive in any and every circumstance.